Hi, everybody. Sean McCracken, news editor, here with Stephanie Ricca. Steph, we are wrapping up at NYU 2025. I guess NYU IHIF now, 2025. What would you describe as kind of the general vibe of the show this year?
The word I keep coming back to, Sean, is resilience.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll explain it a little bit why I think that way we talk to a lot of people during the course of these shows, whether it's sitting in on panels or listening to speakers, but then we have a lot of one-on-ones with people who are, various segments around the industry. And the takeaway that I had from pretty much everybody I talked to was, hey, headlines are strange. There's still the U word, uncertainty. However, and there was always a however, we are doing XYZ.
Mm-hmm.
We're not. One of the questions that we asked people was 3 months ago, 6 months ago, you all said that you were in wait and see mode. Are you still in wait and see mode, or are you in do mode? And I think the resilience kind of calls back to that, because people said, yeah, there's a lot that we have to wait and see on, like deals and pips, because who knows how to underwrite it, but we are finding things to do. So, hey, At the end of the day, all we got to do is find things to do.
I mean, everybody still has to do their job. I think there has been a lot of discussion about, in the last quarter especially, there's been a pullback on people wanting to make big investments. Like, that's a real thing.
Absolutely.
I mean, I feel like my sense of the vibe may be a little bit different. I think that there's a pretty palpable sense of frustration, which I talked about a little bit yesterday in our video recap. But the thing that's interesting to me about that is that I think that there was a palpable sense of frustration last year at NYU, but it was kind of inwardly focused for the industry. Like I talked to a lot of investors, operators who were frustrated that kind of the brands were kind of turning the screws, right? Like there was like kind of a crackdown, and people thought like, all right, well, we need to work together a little bit more. But the brands were seemingly saying like, all right, we gave you years of leeway. Things seem fine now. Let's
get back to
make up for lost time. We got to, the industry's in reasonable shape overall, so we can't just not renovate rooms. We can't keep making the sacrifices we did for years. So there was this internally focused frustration. This year, there's clear frustration because of everything outside of the industry, right? So it's a really different perspective. Like everyone is frustrated that things are still so uncertain. Everyone's frustrated that they have to deal with, the fallout from tariffs, or the market worries about tariffs, and that what that means for lenders and costs and all of these things that aren't. So it's not the people in the room they're upset with anymore, and it's a different vibe. But I think it amounts to a similar feeling in the end of like, it could be so much better than it is.
Exactly. That either way, for whatever the reason is, it's not happening. And of course, you're talking about hotel deals, buying and selling, but also, anything that you need money for in a hotel. We heard a lot about PIPs, obviously, and that's where that tension comes in, because brands want them to happen still, but owners, it's tough to figure out how to underwrite it, how to value it, how to know what kind of money you need to put forth or ask for. And so it almost makes me wonder, what does that have to do with, we also hear about a lot of brands being announced and expanding and growing. And I think, will we potentially see, if not this idea of selling hotels that you don't necessarily have the capital to invest in, but moving it to a different brand? I don't know. That might be thinking a little too ahead.
I mean, conversions are definitely still a big mover in the industry. And I mean, as recently as last week, we had new brand launches. Barry Sternlicht was on the stage today teasing, without any details, there will be another Starwood brand in the offing. So that's not going to stop. That's going to continue to be the case. I think one of the more interesting comments I heard today was during the, I think it was billed as a collaboration panel. It was mostly operators on the stage, and Craig Smith from Aimbridge Hospitality made a remark about how, everything as uncertain as it is with costs creeping up, like this should be the time that the industry kind of buttons up the things that it's needed to button up for a long time. Like in terms of, the technology offering and everything, like
Mm-hmm.
where we're behind the curve, we need to catch up during this period where people don't want to make big waves. Like, let's do the simple things. And his example, I think, was a really good one where he was talking about how the hotels and the operators need more support from the brands for technology to do things like, if you have a restaurant on site, you should have some way of letting your guests order food online or in the app, because it only saves everyone money and it's a better guest experience, because it's one of those situations where you don't need to talk to another person, because that's never, I would say almost never, a positive, guest service interaction to have to
Mm-hmm.
pick up that phone, dial it, wait forever for somebody to pick up. Because it's not even a front desk person usually. It's usually somebody
Right.
in like the kitchen who doesn't have
Yes.
time, and they're not really like a customer service oriented person.
So this
It's
doesn't exist? This
not at every
is,
hotel. That's the thing.
wow.
And it should
Okay.
be. It's a lot of hotels, bigger hotels, it's so commonplace, right? We're kind of spoiled by it. But the fact that it's not everywhere
Right.
is a problem, because it's an expectation. Like, I can order food from basically every restaurant in New York City on
And
my
it's
phone.
easier to do that than to order it from the restaurant in
And
your
that's a
hotel.
that's a problem if
Mm-hmm.
if it's easier for me to order food from a restaurant across the city than it is in your hotel, then that's a failing.
So those pain points, and digital key could be one of those too. You
Hmm.
see that kind of in spotty rollout, depending on where you are. That's interesting. I did not. So of course this is an investment conference, and most of the talk is on deals, hotel performance, how that all works together. But there was some, of course, conversation about AI. And I think you and I both were in a conversation where the talk turned to digital marketing around AI, which I thought this
Hmm.
was an interesting topic. And we were asking hoteliers, and they were operators, owners, how many of them really had kind of played around with generative AI to look at how their hotels came up in search. Because, sidebar, we hear more and more from booking companies and so on that people are using these chat platforms to plan their trips. And so many of these people in the room had never thought about doing that. There
Yeah.
were plenty that said, oh, yes, and we're trying to figure out what this SEO looks like, what these algorithms are, how we get results. But so many more who, oh, no, I didn't even think about doing that. And that's another technology curve that I feel the hotel industry in general might be falling a little farther behind on.
Yeah, and there was some interesting discussion today in the general sessions, when the topic of the OTAs was brought up, and how influential they are in general in hotels and travel today, with the idea that, hey, they're going to lose, they already are losing kind of traffic share to generative AI.
Mm-hmm.
So how does
That's
that
their
change the
worry
landscape?
point,
Yeah.
right?
But beyond that, like, you have to change how you think about like top of the funnel, right?
Yes.
Because if the entry point changes, then you have to marketing to those potential guests change.
Exactly. And it does all come back to that, what I call the cornerstone is demand, right?
Yeah.
And that's still persistent, not huge, but growing demand with little hotel supply. Like, this is great for hoteliers. Maybe not super amazing great, but hey, it is demand. So where can you find that extra demand, incremental demand, replaced demand, whether it's from, other types of travelers or people coming in from or not coming in from overseas? How do you get that demand through whatever channel? At the end of the day,
Yeah.
is what's going to make your hotel sell at the end of your hold period. And hopefully it's not during a economic downturn.
Well, and I think that lends into the last thing I wanted to get to before we wrap this up, is just at most of these conferences, you get a pretty good sense of what hoteliers broadly expect going forward. And I
Mm-hmm.
mean, you joke about it, but at Alice every year since it's the beginning of the year, new year, new sense of optimism, everybody feels great.
Yep.
NYU, there's a little bit more realism, but I think that we can usually get a sense from people of how they feel the early days of the summer travel season is going, and then what they
Mm-hmm.
expect for the rest of the year. I feel like this year people really didn't want to put a pin
Nope.
on what's going to happen in the back half of the year.
Exactly. I heard so little
Hmm.
about that.
Yeah, which I think is telling. I mean, and I don't think people are necessarily hiding what they think of is going to happen. I think that they just generally didn't have a good sense of it, so they didn't want to talk about it.
Sure. And they've probably readjusted to live more in the present. I don't know.
Yeah, which we've all had to do recently. So that's it from NYU IHIF 2025 for us. We will be rolling out more and more coverage from this conference over the coming days and weeks. So stay tuned to CoStar.com/hotel news. So thanks for listening, and keep coming back for more.
Thanks for listening. This episode was recorded June 3rd, 2025 by Sean McCracken and edited by Brian Roten.